Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast, joined by Devin Jackson, Brian Maffey, Sam Teets. Andrew Harbaugh is stuck at Walmart. He'll be joining us shortly as well. It is good to see everybody. Devin, what's going on after the first week of preseason football?
Yeah, just there's a Eagles open practice happening right now tonight in Philly. So right now, all the focus is on who's going to be CB2 for the Eagles. It's kind of the big battle right now in camp between Keely Ringo, Adoree Jackson, and now Jacorian Bennett has entered the chat on that. So that's kind of the big thing happening in the Eagles land. But for me personally, just trying to get all caught up for the 2026 class before we have a game here in I think at this point it's about 13 days. We have our first college football game. So super excited for that and getting all ready for the college season and seeing how everything shakes out for the draft next spring.
Cool. And Brian, what's the good word with the Packers?
They sucked the other night, but I mean, it's the first game, so I mean, they dropped a bunch of balls. But I guess I didn't get a chance to watch the game because I was doing family stuff. But I guess Golden looked good; his hands are really good and stuff like that. And I guess the D line looked pretty good, but otherwise, it was just kind of a forgettable game, I guess.
Okay, and Sam, how much preseason football do you catch?
Yeah, I mean, I've been watching a lot of all 22 today, looking at the rookie offensive line class primarily because it's just too big of a class to go through everyone. So I decided to focus a little bit on the offensive line, check them out. So that was cool. Patriots got some really good players, and Will Campbell and Jared Wilson actually played really well next to each other in that game. So I'm actually excited to see how that offense plays out this year because they have so many young players that we scouted over the past 2 or 3 seasons. But watching that and Harvard offensive tape today, so a bit of a weird day overall. Got some FedEx Championship in there as well. They went 4 rounds in a playoff on a whole 18, which was nice. So busy day today.
Okay. Well, we are here to discuss the top 50 boards for Sam, Brian, and Devin. We're not going to go through all 50. That would be really long. We don't have that kind of time. If you're watching on YouTube, if you go to the comments section, I already put in every single player that made at least one of the top 50 boards. But Devin, who is a player in your top 50 that you would like to talk about?
Yeah, so there's a lot of players that I think towards the top of the list that I think everyone kind of knows and kind of has similar in terms of similar grades or similar feelings about it. And I feel like quarterbacks are going to come up at some point in this discussion. So I'm gonna go Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end from Oregon. I'm gonna talk a little bit about him just because really my first live exposure of him was a Big Ten championship game between Penn State and Oregon last December. And I got a chance to see him live in person, and I didn't really know a lot about him, but he made a couple splash plays in that game, and he's the type of player that made you go back and take a closer look. Obviously, they had Terrence Ferguson come out and be a nice, solid draft pick for them. I think he got picked 3rd round by the Los Angeles Rams. But you look at Sadiq, I think his athleticism really stands out on tape. A guy that wasn't really asked to do a lot in a receiving game just because of some of the weapons that Oregon has. But when you start to project his role a little bit forward and a little bit what he can do with the ball in his hands and some of the athleticism that he shows, the ability to stretch the field, I think he has as well. Then you see him pop up on Bruce Feldman's freaks list as a guy that's a freak athlete. So really, it kind of shows you a little bit more about what he brings to the table. And me being a former tight end myself, I'm always impartial to tight ends and what they bring to the table. And I really think he's a guy that while we're talking about Max Clare and some of those other guys that I think at tight end 1, I think he's a guy that I know he was in Dane Brugler's summer tight end 1. I'm not quite there. And he's quite a bit down on my list just because I think there's a little bit of projection involved there. But it's easy to see him being one of the top targets for Dante Moore this year. And him having a big breakout season. So I could see him being a guy that I put him towards the end of my top 50, but I feel pretty confident that just based on some of the athleticism tools and what Oregon has done at the tight end position recently, I think he has a good chance of being a riser.
Brian, go ahead, Sam.
I was going to say he's one of the couple of players I haven't gotten around to grading out yet, which is funny because I've gotten about 330 names deep and I'm putting together a big board and just looking at the list tonight, I'm like, there's another 7 guys I know I have to go back and watch. So it's just funny how we can get so deep into the process and still have some incredible names. And Sadiq is a guy who's popped up quite a bit in discussions. So I'm excited to see some of those athletic traits and how they can translate.
Yeah. He's definitely a guy that's on my watch list that, I've watched obviously him, but as far as like, because he wasn't really a starter, of course, like you talked about. So, the guy could definitely move up the boards this year.
Yeah. And Brian, is there a player in your top 50 that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, actually, a guy I'm not really getting much talk. I'm surprised is I think I've mentioned him before, but Corey Robinson from Arkansas, the offensive tackle. He transferred over from Georgia Tech. I really liked his film, actually. Not super athletic, but pretty athletic. I think he can still say, he's got really quick feet. He can stay on. I think he can stay on the left side as far as like the NFL and whatnot. He's obviously got some stuff he's got to work on. Sorry, I'm just gonna pull my nose up here real quick. Yeah, he had hit NFS grade. 34-inch arms. He's got a pretty good kick step. He's got a big frame. He can probably add some more weight even if he wanted to. He's a pretty efficient mover. He's like I say, he's just got some technical stuff he's going to continue to work on, little inconsistencies and stuff like that. He uses his hands pretty well. He can use his hands independently, all that good stuff. So I think he's a guy that I think just hasn't gotten a lot of talk. I think that's just because of the Georgia Tech and they have that weird offense they run where they're basically running the ball like 80% of the time. So, but yeah, I think like I said, he's athletic. I think he's got NFS grades, like I said. So obviously NFL at least is monitoring him and likes him. So yeah, I think he's a guy he's good to watch out for that. And he plays left tackle, so he's obviously those guys tend to get boosts from the NFL.
Okay. And Sam, is there a player in your top 50?
I just put out his report today, actually. DJ McKinney from Colorado, the cornerback. Last year playing opposite Travis Hunter, stepping into a bit of a more leadership role this year. Definitely some pros and cons here. I think his work in press coverage, particularly trying to actively jam players, is a bit janky right now. Timing's not great. He's a very thin player, so you have a bit of a play strength concern. But in terms of all the other athletic traits, having the foot quickness, having the fluid hips, the top speed, that's all there for him to be a shutdown corner. And I do project him as a guy who opens up as an immediate starter for a team, primarily as a CB2, but has the chance to develop into a CB1 in the NFL. You're looking at a guy who can play cover 1 or can play cover 3 heavy schemes. So really a fluid athlete. Again, you're not going to get much out of him trying to actively jam players, but playing some soft shoe press. He has the footwork to get out of some compromising situations near the line of scrimmage. You can be a little more patient there. You would appreciate that. But overall, just a really superb athlete. I do think he left some production on the field this past year by not getting his head around in time to locate the football. But in terms of the football IQ and man coverage with all the extra athleticism tacked on top of that, and then just in zone, being able to actively drive and break underneath routes, doing a really good job processing layered route concepts. I think he's a really smart football player, and he's got those athletic traits on top of that. So to me, when we look at McKinney, we're talking about a top 3 to 4 cornerback in this class, and definitely guys who are well within my top 50. If I had to do like a mock draft right now, he'd probably be a first-round inclusion just because the cornerback class to me is so thin, and he's one of the leading guys there who can play both man coverage and zone at a high level.
Thanks, Sam. Devin, is there another player in your top 50 that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about Max Llewellyn, the Iowa edge rusher. He's the guy that, to me, every time that you throw on Iowa's tape, rotational guy, a guy that didn't really start last year, but again, I thought about last summer and what Mike Green was able to do in terms of being more of a situational pass rusher, a guy that rotated in and then really developed into a guy that a lot of people were talking about, obviously for the on the field, not so much off the field. But I look at Llewellyn, I think he's a guy that can do the same type of thing, has a devastating spin move, a guy I think that has maybe a little bit of a smaller frame, not as big as a frame as you would like, probably a guy that I think projects more as a true pass rusher at the NFL level, but he has a devastating pass rush move. He quickly gets gets the tackles on their heels, a guy that can go both inside and out as a pass rusher. I would love to see a little bit more from him in terms of run defense and being able to use his hands a little bit better and anchoring a little bit more when he's coming upfield. But I would mainly use them in pass rush situations and third down situations when they have 4 or 5 lined up across, and a guy that can do it from both sides of the formation too. He's not just a scheme dependent player. But I came away super impressed with what he did on tape. Just in passing, watching him last fall and then going back and watching him some more. He was a guy to me that was a no-brainer to include in the top 50, even if he doesn't end up being a top 50 player in this class when it's all said and done, because I think edge rushers always get that little bit more of a boost, especially when you have a go-to move, and his go-to move is a spin move. So I'm very excited to see what he does if he gets more starter-level reps this year. I would love to see how he handles that workload a little bit more, but in terms of just being a true pass rusher, a guy that really makes it difficult for tackles to stay in front of, I think Llewellyn is a guy that you should bring up in this class for sure.
Devin, let me hop in there because there's a lot of these super explosive pass rushers in this class. Talk about Llewellyn, there's like R. Mason Thomas, David Bailey, Anto Saka, a lot of these guys who primarily serve pass rushing roles. But in this class where you have kind of this group of top guys that everyone likes, but they don't have maybe as much bend as that group. And it's also like maybe no true blue chips. There's a lot of guys who might have round 1 grades but are not true superstars. Could you see someone like Llewellyn sneaking to the back end of the first round, kind of being there as maybe a developmental type player with great pass rush upside?
I certainly think it's possible. I really think it comes down to how does he test athletically? Is he the top tier, like rare athlete? I think that's where you kind of start to see a little bit of a difference on a guy that maybe can sneak his way into late round 1 versus a guy that goes, to early to mid round 2. I think right now he's probably in that early to mid round 2 range for me, just because I think, he's going to serve a purpose. He's going to rush the passer. He's going to be a really good player, for Iowa's defense next year. And I'm expecting big things from him. So I'm super excited what he can bring to the table and hope Llewellyn can continue to translate a little bit more what he did as a kind of a rotational player, pass rusher type for Iowa versus being a true starter and being a 3-down threat.
Brian, real quick, I want to welcome Andrew. Thanks for joining the stream today. I know we had you waiting out there a little bit for some Walmart stuff, so I appreciate you hopping on. It's great to meet you too, by the way. We're all excited to have you on here.
Yeah, nice to meet everybody too. And Devin, I've known Devin for forever. I think this is the first time I've done anything with him, like person to person like this. So closest we've done is the Pittsburgh airport. So again, we just tease each other.
I think I said it last week. If this is the podcast where we just do all of the former employer reunions, if that's the way that Draft Professor podcasts evolve, I'm all for it. So I'm like Andrew, I'm happy that you and Devin can see each other on camera now.
Yeah. Now he gets to see me scramble around to get ready for this. So you guys keep doing you. I will listen for a minute.
Yeah. So actually, I want to throw a question to Brian here because we're talking about Max Llewellyn here for a second. We're talking about all these different guys who kind of have this DPR role in college. I know I'm a huge Anto Saka fan. I think everyone here has a pretty good opinion of David Bailey.
Right.
Brian, not a lot of these guys got tasked with defending the run at a high level. Part of that's, again, Iowa running their kind of odd rotation, taking Max Llewellyn off. For some reason, Northwestern's not giving Anto Saka run defense reps, even though he does fairly well in the situations.
Right.
And then you've got someone like David Bailey playing God knows where at any given time on that defensive line for Stanford where they moved him around. How much, when you evaluate these guys, how much of it is what they can't do versus what the coaching staff just doesn't let them do? How do you kind of go through that process mentally and trying to evaluate these maybe undersized edge rushers?
Yeah, that's something I've learned over the years of scouting. Is just because you see a player not do something on film doesn't mean he can't do it. So that's something I've learned because, these college offenses and defenses are they're a little quirky sometimes compared to NFL offenses and defenses. So, it's the coaches, that's their scheme. That's how they do it. And that's it. They don't that's, how do you put it? They have their way of doing it and players need to fit into their system instead of how the NFL is a little more collaborative, a little more, okay, let me work my system around my players' strengths and stuff. And let my players do different things. So like I know it's a different position, but like say for example, like wide receiver, sometimes you see a wide receiver in college. Sometimes maybe his calls ask him to run like 3 routes. It doesn't necessarily mean he can't run these other routes. That's just the offensive system it runs. So it's the same thing with like I said with the edge rushers is just because I don't see a player do something on film doesn't mean he can't do it. But I still look for how would I put it? Even if I try and find at least some clips of it or the few times that they let them do it, and I evaluate off of that. And then I try at least, especially in summer scouting, at least try and project it out a little bit from there. Obviously, in the end of cycle, that's different, but at least in summer scouting, at least try and project it out.
Okay, so Brian, is there a player in your top 50 that you want to spend some time and talk about?
Yeah, a guy actually was a pretty fun watch. Was oops, where do you go? Here was David Oki from Arkansas, another Arkansas player, oddly enough. But yeah, so he transferred over from Abilene Christian. Obviously, I found him out from the NFS grades because he got an NFS grade. I was like, oh, who's this guy? So I got to go back, and other people talk about him, of course, too. So I had to go back and check him out. So he has pretty good film, actually. He actually played against, I think it was it Texas Tech last year? I think it was, or TCU, one of the Texas schools, and he played really well against them. He was probably the best player on the field, at least for Abilene Christian. But yeah, so he's interesting story background. He was born in Nigeria, came over here, I think it was like a little before high school or something like that. And then we have official measurements for him. He's just under 6'2", 312, and his arms are almost 32 3/4. So he's got some good size, good length, really good against the run, strong dude. And he's flashed some some pass rush upside. He gets good pressure on the quarterback, but he just hasn't been able to close it out yet. So that's something I'd like to see him work on. And of course, just some little things, of course, working on his hands, just getting in a Power 5 program, getting in the Power 5 weight room, all that stuff, just trying to, get to that closer to the NFL skill set. But yeah, so I think, it's a little bit of a projection. I think he's going to, or at least hope he's going to develop some pass rush moves this year, some pass rush work, show some development there. But definitely the upside's there for him to be a pretty good guy who can defend the run and rush the passer as well.
Okay.
I haven't watched him yet.
Sam, do you want to tell us about a player that you have watched that's in your top 50?
Yeah, I mean, I've got go to one of the guards here, right? I've got 4 or 5 guards. We have a document highlighted with some of our different players, and I've got a bunch of guards on here. So I think we might as well go with Ben Morosky, who's a guard from UConn. Fewer than 450 career snaps. He's had a bunch of major injuries, so if he doesn't go this high in the actual draft because of a medical red flag, I would totally understand that. I think it's fair to acknowledge that. But just in terms of build and athleticism, this guy might be the best UConn offensive lineman in the past couple of years. And they've had several players drafted from that line in that program. But he's unofficially listed at 6'7", 335. Even if he's a little bit under that, he's still a really tall and thick player with the traditional build. Again, doesn't have a ton of experience to him, like 450-ish, maybe a little under 450-ish snaps. But a ridiculous athlete. Like the combination of burst, the range, his anchor, the ability for him to thrive in a wide zone scheme at that size is super unique. And so I'm projecting a lot based on traits here because he doesn't have a ton of tape. The tape itself is fairly up and down a little bit, but I think it's projectable considering a player doesn't have a ton of experience. But a guy that size who moves that well, who can anchor that well, and has that much power in his hands to knock back offensive lineman. Or defensive lineman. He's got a snatch trap. He's got the agility to mirror guys as a pass pro. Overall, his ability to operate on the move, finish blocks on the move, and then be a superb player is really difficult to play through in pass protection. I'm really optimistic for him this year. I'm just hoping he gets through the season healthy because if he does, we could be looking at potentially one of the most underrated guards in the country.
Okay, Andrew, are you ready?
I am. I'm all queued up and ready to talk about a guy I like a lot that I don't hear a lot about either. Odds are Devin and everybody else is probably, and Sam and Brian have already heard of him at least. But Eric O'Neal, edge rusher out of Rutgers, his story is one of the really fun ones where started at lower level, like started out at Long Island. And usually you see guys when they get to the Big Ten and the Sun Belt, like he transferred to James Madison last year, then went from James Madison, now he's at Rutgers. Usually guys, when they're really good and you get like eyes on them and everything, you expect them to really dominate when they're at that lower level, at least production-wise. In 3 years at Long Island, he only had 4.5 sacks. Now, obviously, we're not trying to box score scout here, but this is a number that's pretty hilarious to think about. So 4.5 sacks in 3 years at Long Island. Last year at James Madison in the Sun Belt, he gets 13 sacks. So something clicked. He figured it out. The pass rush plan was there. First team Sun Belt as a result. Watching him, like I said, with his background. Oh, somebody doesn't have an iPhone. 2-star recruit when he got to James Madison. Played basketball in high school. I always like basketball backgrounds, especially with linemen and linebackers especially. And as I mentioned, first team Sun Belt. But on top of the 13 sacks, he had 19 tackles for a loss. So, like, the dude just lives in the backfield. And like I said, the pass rush plan is clearly there. I really like his swim move ability. He has a spin. He has tons of tools in the arsenal to get into the backfield and just overwhelm guys. Ironically, what found him was whenever I'm trying to fill out like my summer sheet and I don't have enough guys, I'll go to like PFF grades from the year before just to kind of be like, okay, well, if they graded him high, then it's worth me checking out. His run defense for PFF in 2024 was 80.6. His pass rush is really a hard phrase to get out right now. 78.9 grade there. In his entire career with PFF, 91 quarterback hurries, 125 defensive stops. Like, this dude's just my first note on him was motor with an endless gas tank in the motor that allows him to pursue every play to the whistle. And I think that's really where he gets a lot of it is it's just straight up effort. And obviously coaches can work with that at the next level. Like, you get a guy who's going to give you 110% on a play. That's 9/10 of the battle there. I really think he demonstrates good length. Like I talked about, really like him off the edge. I put on there, he has rockets in his cleats. Really like the counters he has in his back pocket to bust out when he needs, and he can produce right away. I think if he was drafted last year, he's somebody that somebody could put on like a pass rush situation, and he would be producing right now in the NFL. But now we get to see him go from James Madison, where he was a monster, to now we get to see him go to Rutgers and play a Big Ten schedule with much more impressive offensive linemen. You really get to see him get an idea of what he's going to be like. Eric O'Neal, like I said, and just he's somebody I'm really, really excited about. 6'3", 250, so size can be hit or miss. Obviously, the numbers aren't official there on that one, but Eric O'Neal, I am all in on. Watching him was some hilarious tape. And if you want some really good tape too, like I said, last year's James Madison, North Carolina shellacking, which was hilarious to think about in hindsight, he lived in that backfield. Like, if you want a good first impression to be like, okay, I need more of him, go and watch the North Carolina game with Eric O'Neal.
Okay. I love the Rutgers shout out, and that's also my mother's alma mater. So bonus points for mentioning where my mom got her master's from.
See, and I just knew that. So of course,
yeah.
It's a shame we're playing Whose Line Is It Anyway, where the points don't matter.
Yeah.
So, Devin, what quarterbacks do you have in your top 50?
Yeah, quarterback's always a big discussion point. But yeah, for me, in my top 50, I believe the quarterbacks that I have are Cade, Klubnik, LaNorris Sellers, Drew Allar, Fernando, Mendoza, and John Mateer are the 5 guys that I have in my top 50.
I think you also have
And
Nussmeier.
didn't you have
pretty
Nussmeier as well?
Nussmeier as well, yeah. A name that I somehow overlooked just because he feels like he's been in college forever.
Yeah.
So I believe out of the 4 people on the podcast, you were the only one with Nussmeier in your top 50. So feel free to talk about any of those quarterbacks and maybe spend a little bit of time on Nussmeier.
Yeah, I'll start with Nussmeier first. I think projecting him forward, I think it's easy to see why the NFL will like him and like what he brings to the table. I think the decisiveness that he has throwing the football, he showed some progression and pocket movement, although I think he does get himself in trouble a little bit sometimes, trying to escape the pocket. I think there's a hero ball element to him, but in terms of touch, he has some of the best touch that I've seen from a quarterback in this class. Just his ability to place footballs down the field, be able to relocate and set his feet and make touch throws. I think he's a guy that when you weigh the good versus the bad, I think there's a lot more good that Nussmeier brings to the table versus bad. And I think down the stretch of the season, it was obvious that he was trying to do too much, trying to force things a little bit, force the issue a little bit. His interior offensive line didn't help him as well, despite having two really good tackles. And I think he, over the course of the year, you can say that he did a little bit better in terms of decision making. In the final game of the season, the bowl game versus the last few weeks against Florida, against Texas A&M, where things really started to fall apart for him. But I think with Nussmeier, I think the thing with him is, can he be not only better with the football in terms of limiting some of the, not only the interceptions, but some of the risky throws that he made. And I think a lot of it came with being a first-year starter, and also being able to utilize his weapons and can continue to build his accuracy, and just be a little bit better under pressure. I think those things are things that are correctable for Nussmeier, which makes me confident that he could be a top 50 player in the 2026 class. And I don't think he has necessarily any elite tools, but I would say I think his throwing touches some of my favorite in the class, and some of the throws that you make, some of his best throws that he made last year. I think if you put it all together, you could put it up against some of the other quarterbacks in this class, and they look pretty good. But I think balancing out some of the lows that he had and some of the errant decision making that he had down the stretch, I think will be super beneficial. And then Fernando, Mendoza, and Drew Aller, I think two other quarterbacks that were my top 50 that maybe weren't some others. I think for me, the Drew Aller one's a little bit. I'm a little closer to the situation, I feel like, than most people are in terms of seeing his development up close and personal, getting to know him over the last couple of years, covering Penn State, and seeing the progression that he had from those first few games that he started, the first few times he was thrown out into the fire. I think the first major game that he played in was against Michigan a couple years ago. And Penn State, I think, lost by like 24 points or something. They kind of threw him into the fire there. And it was obvious that you could see the talent, you see the arm strength, the effortlessness that he throws the football with. And I think that's still something that rings true to the player that he is now. But I think over the course of time, he has gotten better and better at being a little bit more decisive, finding multiple reads if his first read is locked down. I think for him, it's about hitting the layups. I think too many times there are times where he just dirts footballs. His footwork isn't as clean as it needs to be, and he misses short throws inexplicably, not because of the arm strength, but because maybe the footwork isn't aligned. Maybe he's aiming versus more so actually throwing the football. And obviously the performances in big games, I think too, is going to always be the big determining factor in whether or not he's going to be a top 10, top 15 pick versus a guy maybe you take a day 2 swing on. So I think with Allard, there's a big-ish range where you could see him going, but I'm tend to project him more in the top half of the first round, within the top 20 picks, just because one, I think his size and arm strength combination is going to be too hard to pass up. But two, his mobility has gotten better year over year over year, and I think this year you're going to see his mobility take another step. And I think it's not just mobility in terms of like, I don't think he's going to be a Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson type of athlete, but I think he's a guy that can pick up first downs with his feet, can find those little spaces to utilize his feet and be a threat if nothing is open downfield. And I think, too, him entering now his third year as a starter, I think we start to see the trend of prospects playing a little bit more kind of have that immediate success. When I was talking to Connor Rogers a few weeks ago, because I'm working on the story about Alar and where his draft projections are, what scouts want to see, and he made a good point on that. Some of the most successful rookie quarterbacks we've seen recently have played a lot of football, and it's super beneficial at the college level to see a lot of different things, to play at different levels, to be a guy that maybe you win because of, or win in spite of. I think Drew Aller has kind of been on both sides of the coin. And I think when you look at all those things combined, I think there's a good chance that he puts it all together this year, has the best receiving core that he's had, still has that duo and at running back, another good stable of tight ends. I think he makes a big step this year. Sorry, a little long-winded, but I think, for me, I think Nussmeier and Aller being two of the more experienced guys in this quarterback class, along with Cade Klubnik. I really like those three guys in terms of what they bring to the table, leadership aspects for their teams, the amount of football that they've seen or have played. And I think all three have a good chance to take a big step this year.
And that offensive line you hit on at the very end there, I think is key too, because they have a lot of draft capital along that offensive line, tons of experience there as well. So that'll be huge for them going forward.
And if I can say too, just another believe in Aller piece, getting in Pena from Syracuse, I think he's going to be a fun piece for them as well. I think that's something where Aller has tried to be the guy for that whole offense outside of the running game. And I've been very vocal. I don't know if Penn State was the best place for him to develop. Program's great. Obviously, produce an NFL talent. You're winning games. Penn State can be happy with that for now. But I think Aller gets a lot of unnecessary weight on social media and from commentators, because obviously if you're a 5-star quarterback and you've been starting this long, there's a lot to it. But I think this year, the way the team's built, everyone's developed, everyone's been there a little while, everyone came back. I think this is where Aller, I think, can really take a big step, like Devin's talking.
Yeah, and Devin, it's okay to be long-winded as long as we're not talking about punters, kickers, or long snappers. I'm good.
Hey, they deserve their love too, man. Good shout out to my guy Alex Katzen. He's a big specialist enthusiast. So there obviously there's a time and place for that. But hey, there's people out there sitting on the edge of seats for specialists, because they don't matter right now, but they're gonna matter if your team needs a kicker.
Yeah, I don't think there were any specialists in the top 50 when the boards were shared with me earlier this afternoon.
Maybe get Alex on it.
Brian, who are the quarterbacks in your top 50?
I got I think it's where'd mine go? I know it's where'd mine go? It's shoot, I'm sorry, I lost my stuff here. I know I got Mendoza in there, and then I got let's see, Mendoza, I know for sure.
I see Sellers. I'm looking at your
Sellers,
board right
yeah,
now.
Mendoza, Sellers. I think that's, and then Klubnik, I believe. Yeah, it's Sellers. Yeah, I have those three. Yeah, I agree with a lot of stuff with what Devin was saying, especially about Klubnik and stuff. Just the experience is obviously a good thing. But then also that's helping guys get ready for the NFL. There's even the data out there that, I think everybody's probably heard about it. The guys who just had 1 year starting, they just the failure rate is just really high. So, you want your quarterbacks with at least 2 years of starting experience at the very least, preferably 3. But yeah, Klubnik is a guy that, had all this fanfare when he came into Clemson and just was not that great his first year. Year 2 showed some improvement, but it wasn't a lot, I think. And I think some people were worried coming into this last year, his 2024 season, because, again, he didn't take a big jump in year 2. It was kind of just a small jump. So people were like, okay, well, here's another, people were thinking of the 5-star bust and whatnot. But, this past year, he played a lot better. It wasn't, I wouldn't call it a huge jump he made, but he made a pretty significant jump in his play. His accuracy is reading the field, just making decisions on time and just letting it rip, It doesn't have a great arm. I would say probably a B- arm, something like that. but definitely good enough. Probably a little above average. He's a good athlete. Obviously, he can run, so he's got that going for him. He can move around the pocket. He's got a good floor. I think he's still got room to grow, though. But again, another guy I think that if he doesn't have to make a huge jump this year, but just at least if he's just shown some progression, just overall progression, just every little thing, he could easily sneak into the bottom of the first round, early second round.
Okay, and Sam.
I think he's going a little bit earlier than bottom of the first round. He's a little bit higher on my board, but again, I'm a little biased. I went to Clemson, so I'm a little bit more invested in the situation potentially. But you did mention the development for him was huge. I used to say the jump this past year was big because there was a lot of people in the fan base who wanted him gone after his first year start. They didn't want him around, and they were losing games because of Cade Klubnik. That wasn't the case this past year, so I think that was a pretty significant jump for him. I only have 3 quarterbacks as well. It's for me, it's Klubnik, it's Sellers, and I have a guy who's not going to declare this year, but I put him in there anywhere. I have Aiden Childs in there. He's not going to actually declare. There's no way it happens. The development stage is just not there. I think he's actually further behind in his development than Cam Ward was when Cam Ward first arrived at Washington State. But I say Childs, looking at the arm talent, and I'll talk about him and Sellers in tandem here very quickly. They might have the 2 best arms in this class if they're both draft eligible. I think those 2 guys are at the top to me. There's not a throw that I don't think either of them cannot make. They both have elite arms. The difference is that Childs has more like that Patrick Mahomes level mobility where he's just fast enough where he can move around and create with his legs, but not to the extent where you're going to design runs for him. But Childs has an elite arm. I think he's much better in the pocket than LaNorris Sellers is currently. I think you see some anticipation throws from him. I think you see good pocket mobility and movement there. Good timing work through the routes. He knows how to win within the pocket in terms of getting that backside dig every now and then. So there's some developmental stuff to work with here right now, and he can create off platform. He's very comfortable throwing on the move, elite velocity and overall arm strength, but the accuracy issues are pretty concerning. There's certainly a lot of up and down for him week to week, even throw to throw, and he will lose you games right now. He's kind of in that stage where he's still developing. Michigan State's not a very good program right now. They need some time to turn things around, which is why I think there's no way he really declares after this coming season. But if we're drafting for ceiling at quarterback, which is how I tend to say we should do it, then looking at someone like Aiden Childs, I think he's going to be a guy who belongs in this second to third round discussion because of the ceiling being so high and him having some of those nice tools like the pocket mobility, the ability to work through progressions fairly quickly, some anticipation, having that stuff with limited experience and not in a program that's really struggled to develop players as of late. I think that's worth hanging your hat and worth looking forward to the future.
Yep. And then Andrew, do you want to weigh in on what quarterbacks you had in your top 50?
I will say I didn't get to finishing watching Nussmeier yet, but I'm very confident that he would be in my top 50 if I had gotten that far. As far as look, we got Gronowski when I'm talking, that was perfectly timed. Thank you, Ryan. He's not in my top 50, but the other ones, I actually have a handful of them here. I got Klubnik, Aller, Sam Levitt, who I'm a big fan of, LaNorris Sellers, John Mateer, and then Sawyer Robinson, who I'm just as obsessed with as I was with Eric O'Neill. So I'll talk about Robinson a little bit since I missed the Baylor episode a couple weeks ago. It's one of those things where it's funny. I noticed it last year when the aforementioned Connor Rogers on his show with Trevor Sycamore was talking about Drew Aller's baseball background really being prevalent when you watch him throw and the way he kind of tries to get the ball out and everything like that. And we've seen guys in the extreme example of Mahomes be able to work it with the different arm angles, Stafford obviously before him. But when you watch Sawyer Robinson, it's literally like watching a shortstop play quarterback. And to hear that come out and then say he's in my top 50 probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But the natural arm talent is there. It's one of those things where it's the old example of you've got the wild stallion that has all the potential in the world to be this great racehorse, and you just got to be able to tame it a little bit. I think and Baylor has a lot of potential this year. A lot of playmakers on offense are going to be fun to watch. But I think Robertson, he has the physical traits that are there. Arm talent, like I said, is there. It's just kind of cleaning up those mechanics. And I think that's something where, is he going to be a first-round guy? I don't know. But if there was a group of – if you had maybe made me pick 3 names of guys who are not in first round right now that have a chance, I would put him there. But it's one of those things where I think he's somebody that is worth investing in. I dare I say back end around 1, maybe if you're in one of those weird situations, or somebody you get on day 3 and you kind of throw into a situation kind of the way the Steelers did with Will Howard, where throw him behind an aging veteran, see what happens. Like, I don't know what the Rams, how much longer they're going to get out of Stafford, but if they don't want to go quarterback round 1, I think Robertson behind Stafford for at least a year would be interesting, especially pairing him with McVay, as I throw out a perfect scenario for a guy to develop. But the physical traits are all there, like I said, and the arm talent's there. So I do just appreciate with Robertson that he has a chance to really be something this year with Baylor. So, and then, like I said, Sam Levitt as well, just absolute cannon of an arm. I think Arizona State's in for another special year, him and Jordyn Tyson. So, again, I clearly have a type when it comes to quarterbacks, which is arm talent, which everyone does. But, yeah, Sawyer Robertson, I think, definitely is going to get talked about a little bit more as time goes on.
Okay. So, Devin, where do you want to go next in your top 50?
Yeah, let me see. I think the next player that I will discuss, I'll talk about Kevin Concepcion from NC State. I think he's a really explosive player. He's a guy that really popped off the screen for me last summer, watching NC State and seeing what he did as a freshman. He took a little bit of a step back as a sophomore in terms of kind of the consistency. I think he battled a little bit of injuries too as a sophomore for NC State. But when he has a ball in his hands, he's one of the most dynamic players, not only in the draft class, but in all of college football. I think he's one of those rare guys that can get to point A to point B, and he looks like a legit 4.3 type of athlete. Like he has that type of speed, that type of explosiveness. NC State I thought was a little bit more creative with how they used him as a freshman versus how he was used as a sophomore, and obviously teams prepared a little bit better for him as a sophomore, and I think it's a guy that I think still needs to develop a little bit more as a natural receiver. I think he relies a lot on his speed to create separation. I don't see a ton of technicality with some of the routes that they use him in, and I don't think the offense is really built around utilizing his strengths and pushing the ball down the field consistently either this past season at NC State. So him going to Texas A&M, I'm super excited to see how he meshes with the A&M offense. I think they're going to have a much better plan for him, and I really think there's a good chance that he's going to have a big year. And I agree with the comment there. I think pairing up with Marcel Reed and having a true vertical threat, a guy that you can put in the backfield that you can have out of the slot, have out as an outside receiver, and can really utilize his speed in multiple ways, not only in the short game, but stretching the field vertically. I think he has a good shot to be a riser in this class. I think he's a little bit of a forgotten name just because he had such a down sophomore year at NC State, and NC State was very good last year. But he's a legit 4.3, low 4.4 guy that the NFL loves these type of athletes and love what they can do with them. So and he has pretty good contact balance too. So I'm really excited to see him in the Texas A&M offense, and I'm betting on him at the very least to reemerge on draft boards and have people talk a little bit more positively about him, and maybe he's a guy that has that breakout season and pushes for wide receiver 1, because I know Jordyn Tyson is kind of the consensus guy, but I think there's a good I think of all the positions in this draft class, I think wide receiver 1 I think has the best chance of changing this time, or I guess around January, February. I think we'll be talking about this receiver class a little bit differently.
Yeah. So I do want to give a shout out. Draft professor Bill Sparks has Kevin Concepcion as wide receiver 1, and Bill doesn't make it sound like for him it's even close. So there are people that do see Concepcion that high. So Brian, who do you want to discuss that's in your top 50?
Yeah, the guy I like that. It seems like they have a guy every year from Michigan, at least. The D-line from Michigan is Rayshon Benny. He hasn't played a super lot just because he's been stuck behind all these NFL guys, these top 10, top 20 type guys. So he hasn't seen a super lot of snaps. I think it was 2023. I think he's played a lot, but I think this past year he didn't play as much. But yeah, I really like this. Again, the guy, I really like this film again. Not the biggest guy, but like he's actually really good against the run, even though he's not, like I said, the biggest guy. I think confirmed size, I think he's like 6'3", 300, something like that. But yeah, he's got some moves too, some pass rush moves. He's got like an arm over, counter club type thing that he uses pretty often. That's pretty effective. He's even taken some snaps at edge, so he can play some edge. Obviously, NFL, you're not going to see him playing on the edge all the time. I mean, unless like it's a short yardage type down type of stuff. But he can still, at least he can play there at times. He's got a little bit of explosiveness, a little bit of bend to him. But yeah, obviously, like I said, he doesn't have the bend to do it consistently. But he sets a good base in the run game. He holds up, like I said, he holds up pretty well for a guy that's barely 300 pounds. He's got really quick feet, and they'll at times Michigan will have him like jump over like 2-3 gaps, and he's really quick jumping across those gaps like that. His get off needs to improve a little bit, but because he'll come off off the snap a little late. He's trying to do a little bit of a hump move sometimes. He needs to work on that, of course. And then, of course, he needs to do a little bit better using his length and using his hands. Sometimes he'll kind of just absorb blockers instead of using his hands to, give him space and get off him and stuff like that. But, he's always working. He's always playing hard. He likes to get up his hands in the passing lanes. He's knocked down some balls and stuff like that. So he can do that too. He's got a little bit of a bull rush. It's pretty effective. He doesn't use it as much as he should. But he's got good vision to find the ball. He's got a push-pull move, so he's got some talent there. It's just he needs to be a starter and play more, on the field more. I think this year he'll be a starter, so he'll be able to at least show that. And again, like I said, it's just needs to show a little more as a pass rush, develop some more moves, some counters, pass rush plan. But a guy I think can really jump up the boards this year.
Sam, anybody in your top 50 that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go with Jude Bowery, tackle from Boston College. So the way I put it last year is I think Jude had the higher flashes than Ozzie, but I think Ozzie was a much more consistent player on the right side of the line than Jude was. You go through like the first half of the season up until Jude Bowery tweaks his knee versus Virginia Tech. I think Jude's putting out potentially first-round caliber tape. And then in the second half of the stretch, you're talking more about like this true fourth-round kind of developmental tackle, from my opinion. So I think there was a pretty big flip after that injury. It wasn't supposed to be a major injury, but I do think you look at the impact it had on the second half of the season. And he even came into the year with some lingering concerns as well with the injury. So I would maybe look into that a little bit. But he's a player who's got really nice prototypical size. I guess he adds some mass to his frame. He's a little bit in terms of strength and play strength. Maybe needs to build up a little bit more. But he's got a great frame to work with. He's an explosive player with a great kick step. Can really cover the full arc. He's got the ability to alter rush tempo to mirror defensive pass rushers. Explosive overall athlete, and does a good job redirecting and protecting the B gap with strong hands. I think he's getting better in terms of block framing, working on a snatch trap as well. He's gotten better at recognizing stunts, because last year, I'm pretty sure, was his first year as a starter. So there was you see some mental errors, but overall getting better at recognizing stunts, getting better at having counters for spin moves. He's got really impressive grip strength, good suddenness off the line as well in the run game. I think if I had to pick, some areas that in play strength shows up a little bit in the run game, where you like to play him, you like for him to play a little bit lower, create a little bit more displacement on the line. But in terms of pass pro, you're dealing with a really, I think, high floor player who has a good ceiling as well. Has to develop the hand usage a little bit. That's something that's pretty common among younger players who have limited experience at tackle. So I'm not too worried about that long term. But for him, he has to find consistency. Again, this past year really oscillated between looking like a great player and then looking like a player who really needed a couple more years to develop. Fortunately, he's going to be, I think, just the redshirt junior this year, so he has more time. And I'm much less concerned about older offensive tackles that are in the NFL than I am at basically any other position in terms of age. Offensive linemen age like fine wine nowadays, so I'm okay with that. But Jude Bowery is a player I'm looking at essentially being first-round pick either this coming year or maybe the cycle afterwards.
Okay. And Andrew, would you like to highlight another player in your top 50?
Yeah, when I joined on coming back from where I was at the store earlier, someone was talking about Iowa, and I caught just the back end of it. Which player were you guys talking about? I just want to make sure I don't know it.
It was
Max
Max.
Llewellyn.
Max Llewellyn.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I was going to bring up Aaron Graves, defensive lineman from Iowa. Again, just to share stereotypical, like I talked about baseball background for the quarterbacks. I've talked about high school backgrounds or basketball backgrounds for edge rushers. Now we're going to talk about wrestling backgrounds for linemen. Iowa really just thrives with that. Like going back to Tristan Wirfs when Tampa Bay got him, and obviously he's become arguably one of the best offensive linemen, regardless of position in the league. Wrestling background seems to be something Iowa goes for. With Aaron Graves, you watch him on top of that, like you see that wrestling in his game. Obviously, he's got the size. He's listed at 6'4", 300. He also did track and field and basketball in high school too. So, four-sport athlete coming out of there, playing the offensive line. He was Max Prep's National Male Athlete of the Year. So, I mean, all sorts of honors and accolades heading into his career at Iowa. And while he doesn't have the sack production necessarily that a lot of other guys may have, if you look at like the hurries and the hits he gets on the quarterback, just creating pressure. As someone who firmly believes that Myles Garrett's better than TJ Watt because of those numbers, I tend to carry a little bit more weight on guys who were able to just basically create pressure. And that's something that Graves is constantly able to do, whether it be on the interior. Sometimes Iowa has him on the edge. I think he's going to have that positional versatility when it goes to the NFL. I really love his run support. Like he just clogs lanes whenever he has the chance to. Some other notes I have on him here. So I'm scrolling down. Yeah, fast hands. Again, that's something that comes with the wrestling, I think, is really prevalent. Really explosive off the ball, which, again, I think all the sports backgrounds you've got, it plays into that. And I think that's something where anytime a guy has all that athletic background, you can't ignore it. He could surprise you with some pass. See, there's that phrase. Pass rush moves. And obviously power for days to just overwhelm guys. So again, just as I talked about Eric O'Neill being a comical watch against North Carolina, Aaron Graves, you could put him on against anybody, and he's a must-watch on the Iowa defensive line. So I'm really excited to see him this coming year take another step.
And tune in there, like when I'm watching Iowa's defense, the name I write down most often is Graves. Like that's the one who shows up most often in my notes. Andrew, question for you. Because I know we have kind of a mix in the interior defense line. You have some guys who have some really polished pass rush moves, or you have some guys who are just really explosive athletes. And Graves has a little bit of all of that. But in terms of how you grade and how you weigh players, what do you look for the most for the interior guys? Do you favor either having like the natural athleticism, or do you favor having like the natural pass rush plan to work with?
It's funny. I think a couple years ago I would have gave a different answer, but like now, I think watching as much of the Bucks I have, like I really appreciate the athletic for his size that Vita Vea has, but I love watching Kalijah Cansey and the hand fighting and the pass. You tried to get me to say it again, Sam. Pass rush plan that he has. So it's something where I've really gotten to enjoy watching Kalijah Cansey, and it's one of those things where he comes prepared every single time. And like I talked about with the hand fighting, that's again the wrestling background for Graves. I think that's something for the interior guys I really look at. And I think that's something too, going back even further, like I remember Aaron Donald coming out of Pitt, and then obviously in his NFL career, like that was his moneymaker, was his hands. Like there was those viral videos where with the fake knives, he was always practicing in the off season. And I think that's something that a lot of guys can adapt to. And I think Cansey has done the best job of that out of a lot of guys. I think the Pitt connection there obviously plays into that with Donald for him. But going back to Graves, like I said, the wrestling just really shows up with him, I think, when he's trying to just get back there. And he's very smart, like I said, with the pass rush plan. Got it out that time. And so, yeah, I like guys that are a little bit smarter, a little bit more patient. as Eric Neal was just a crazy bull off the edge earlier that I talked about, Graves is much more the technician, I think, on the inside. And when his brains aren't getting the job done in rare instances, he'll just maul you and get to the backfield that way. So that's the nice part, where he's able to have plan A, but he also has plans B, C, and D in his back pocket, which I think really speaks to how special he can be.
Okay, well, why don't we pause for a quick second? Devin, do you want to take a moment, introduce yourself to everybody watching, and let them know about all of your draft content and how they can find your content?
Yeah, so I'm Devin Jackson. I'm a sports editor for the Philadelphia Inquirer, and you can just follow me on X at RealD_Jackson. I cover the NFL draft pretty much year round. I've taken most of the last couple months off, but I think towards the end of June, early July is when I kind of pick back up, and have really been in the full swing since. But yeah, I post video clips on my Twitter usually, and I follow pretty much a lot of the top prospects throughout the season. So after games, Sundays and Mondays and Tuesdays, I'll spend a lot of time doing some draft work on guys that I think are going to declare over the year. Appreciate that, Brian. And I just keep up with the draft. I've been covering it for a number of years, and looking forward to this 2026 class.
Andrew.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. I have my handle on there at MandrewNFL. My timeline, for the most part, is really Bucks oriented. We're going to have some draft stuff here and there, but I've really embraced covering that team this year. I also cover the Vikings as well, both for USA Today Sports. So I have a lot of fun doing that. I don't necessarily get all the scoopage and good story writing that Devin provides for his Eagles and Penn State and everything else. And Temple. We can't forget about Temple. Hit the button if you know what I mean. Inside joke for Devin and I. And but yeah, no, Tampa Bay is going to be my main focus this year. I think they're a really fun team. Like I talked about, clearly, Kalijah Cansey is somebody I'm excited to watch, and they're a fun team. Last night, again, covering a game is so chaotic, but it's also the best thing in the world. And I've talked about that a couple times that I've been on here. So, yeah, if you're interested in Bucks and draft stuff, that's that timeline on the bottom left corner as I go to the right is what you're looking for.
Sam.
Yeah, I'm Sam Teets. You can follow me on Twitter, basically any social media platform, and you just put my name in and I'll pop up. There's very few people with my name on Twitter, so you should be able to find me. I run the Substack Sports Talk with Sam Teets. Substack is a free application. You can go on your browser, on your phone. All my content is free, posting daily draft reports, Thursday mailbags, big boards, everything like that. And we'll have a stock up whole segment every Monday following college football games over the weekend. So that'll be a huge thing I'm into every year. This past year, we were highlighting about 20 names every week. It took me more than 12 hours to write, watch, and publish. So it's a lot of work, and I'd be really appreciative if you guys checked it out this year. I also edit for Brandon Thorne's Substack, Trench Warfare, which has some great content on it as well. So I suggest you go check that out if you're getting really interested in getting to the offensive line. Minutia of it all, especially at the NFL level. So there's a lot of great content out there, and feel free to check out his Substack as well. I'll be doing some more NFL stuff too this year. I've got NFL Pro, so I've got access to all 22 film. Hopefully keeping eyes on some rookies this year, maybe doing some posts around them.
Brian.
Yeah, so of course you can see my handle there, BMAAFI NFL. For anybody that's listening to it on Spotify or whatever. You can find my stuff, of course, there on X. Posting draft clips, a little bit of Packer stuff too. Of course, you can always find me here every Sunday. Trying to think anything else. No, that's about it. Mostly just on X, just draft stuff and clips and having fun.
Okay, well, I want to give a plug to the four guests. So if you are already not following Devin, Sam, Brian, or Andrew, just take a second and hit that follow on X. These are all great draft follows. and I respect all of you immensely. So thank you very much for coming on the channel. I do want to give a couple of other plugs. So Sam next week is going to be coming on the channel on Wednesday and Thursday, and we're going to be doing a very similar exercise, except we're going to be going through position by position. So who are the quarterbacks in the top 150? Who are the running backs in the top 150, wide receivers, etc.? We're doing offense one day. We're doing defense the next. And Sam will be doing that with Randall, Bill Sparks, as well as Travis May from A to Z Sports. So want to plug that. And you can catch Brian here every Sunday. The people on camera change, but Brian is here every Sunday. So the draft content is down below. I'm not going to say it all out loud. But why don't we go rapid fire here and give it a big finish and just quickly start talking about guys that are in your top 10 and whether the other people on the podcast have them in their top 10 or not. Devin, you want to shout out 2 or 3 names that are in your top 10 or excuse me, top 50?
Yeah, let me pull this up real quick, back up real quick. I think probably the guy that I enjoy most on the list that I feel like should be more in the top 25, top 30 discussions is Sonny Styles, linebacker from Ohio State. I just think he's on a trajectory to be linebacker 1, to be, a top 20, top 25 player, former safety, a guy that is now entering his second year full-time playing linebacker, and things were starting to click for him towards the end of the season. I thought he had probably one of the best finishes that you saw from a linebacker that could have gone into the draft, decided to come back for another year. But Sonny Styles, I think the sky's the limit for him. I could see him being an easy top 20 pick in the spring. And I think he's a guy that modern NFL defenses want to have on their team, a guy that has a coverage background, that can take on blocks, that can blitz, that can pass rush. I think he has a chance to be the Jahad Campbell type player in this year's class.
Brian.
Yeah. So sorry, drop my thing here. Yeah, but I will say real quick, I do agree with Devin. Sonny Styles, that dude's a freak athlete, dude, former safety, like you said. So he's a guy to keep an eye on. Let's see. I think he was mentioned earlier, but one guy like is Jordyn Tyson from Arizona State. I hate using the term, but he has that kind of Debo-esque skill set. I think he's more of a true receiver than Debo is, but he, despite being listed at 6 foot 185, he runs, with the ball in his hands like he's 220. Dudes are trying to drag him down. He's just charging ahead, getting 5-10 yards. Guys are like hanging on to the end of his jersey. He's turning like little 5-yard hitches into 15-yard runs and stuff. And the dude's just physical. He's a good route runner. He's got pretty good route releases. He's my wide receiver 1. I'm pretty sure I'll probably stay there. But yeah, I think he's a guy that I just really like his film. Anybody else? Real quick, also Jalen Kilgore, South Carolina. He's a versatile chess piece you can use. You can play him in the slot. You can play him at safety, wherever you want. I think he's going to be more of a safety, but you can play him wherever, really. Some people even have him as a corner. You can probably play him some outside corner as well. Just unreal ball skills. He's another guy that I think is going to test really well when he comes out. Good size, can hit, tackle, just kind of almost everything you want at a safety.
Sam, want to give a couple of quick shout outs to other players in your top 50?
Yeah, Xavier Scott, the nickel from Illinois, super fun, instinctive player, high level of play recognition, really good processing. He's got the closing burst to undercut routes. When he's in zone coverage, he's just a thief of joy for the offense. He's the guy who's going to make a ton of plays on the ball. And he's really physical too. He's one of those guys who, is on the smaller side, but punches above his weight pretty consistently, as most ideal nickels do. Throwing out a couple other names, Ryan Baer, this plays tackle at Pitt. He's going to be a guard in the NFL. Just a classic, a little bit heavy set, but very powerful, stout player. Going to give you a very high floor as a prospect, but going to also have a bit of an exciting ceiling with his ability to have good hand usage mid-play, stout anchor, really powerful hands as well. He's very disruptive when you got rushers attacking him, so I love the power he has. And then more on the athletic side of things, someone like a PJ Williams who plays right tackle at SMU has a bit of a history off the field, but in terms of the athlete on the field, terrific range and pass protection, able to work the full arc. If you're looking for an athletic offensive lineman who's going to be a tremendous pass protector and give you some range in like a wide zone scheme, PJ Williams from SMU is probably your guy.
And Andrew, big finish. Who do you want to shout out that's still in your top 50?
I will never ignore a chance, I should say, to plug Dylan Thieneman out of Oregon. Dude was an absolute monster last year at Purdue. I think he's going to go to Oregon and cement himself as a top 10 guy. Right now, he's my 7th overall prospect, so just one of my top guys. The rest are all names we know, so I won't dig too deep into them. But for Thieneman, like I said, I cover the Vikings, and I watched him, and the whole time, he just screamed Harrison Smith to me. I think great in the run game, good range and coverage, good instincts. Like, he's everything anybody wants roaming the back of their defense. And then another guy that I think got forgotten about because he was hurt last year and the season was up and down for the team until the end, Eugene Wilson III out of Florida. I fully believe if you go back and you watch his freshman year, like it is wide receiver 1 type tape. And then last year obviously was just a disaster in the beginning. He gets hurt as well, missed a lot of the season, never really got his footing back. And I think getting ready, Florida in general has a lot of expectations. DJ Lagway leading the way. He's not draft eligible yet, but he's going to elevate that whole offense. And I think Eugene Wilson's going to get a lot of work out of that. I really hope Napier kind of gets back to where used him in gadget plays, kind of gave him that old school Percy Harvin role where they just got the ball in his hands in any way they could, because his vision, his body control, his movement ability in the open field is just hilarious to watch. Defenses try to figure out how to get a hold of him. When he's healthy, he's, I think, one of the 3 best wide receivers in this class. I think right now he's going to be lower on a lot of people's boards. Deservedly so, like I said, coming off the year he had. But I think Eugene Wilson is somebody that people need to get excited about once again. Like I said, the freshman film's there. Last year wasn't great, but I think 2025 for Florida in general, plus Wilson's going to be something interesting.
Okay, well, we've been going for a little bit more than 65 minutes. So if you want to see the combined boards, the Draft Professor Simulator is going to be updated tomorrow morning, and the top 50 boards that were shared here will heavily influence who you see in the top 100 at Draft Professor. I also have a spreadsheet, so if you're watching this and you want to see kind of where the top 50s were, you can look in the YouTube comments. So I've put all of the players that were included in the YouTube comments already. And then you'll also be able to see it on the Draft Professor Simulator sometime tomorrow once I take the time and actually update the board. So for Devin, for Andrew, for Brian, for Sam, give all of these gentlemen a follow. We could not do this channel without your contribution. So I appreciate all of you taking a little bit of your time. We've had a lot of people watching. So if this is a new podcast for you, we're here every day. This podcast is daily. Hit that subscribe. You'll be notified of when the new podcasts go live. But we're generally live at 9 p.m. Eastern most weeknights. So for all 5 of us and for all of the 85 podcasters at Draft Professor, thank you for watching, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday night.